With the United States of America having declared war on all Amazons and Wonder Woman trying to get to the truth of why all this is happening, it seems like the best place to start is with a little discussion about Wonder Woman's future daughter, Trinity, as well as the discovery of a third Lasso of Fate. What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, I'm going to be talking about Wonder Woman #2, written by Tom King, with art by Daniel Sampere, and color by Tomeo Mori. So this issue, there's some pretty cool things that are going on here, and while I will technically be talking about some of those things in here, first and foremost of which is just based on some flashbacks that we're getting while Wonder Woman is going to more or less war with the United States government in this issue, with Sarge Steele actually sending an army, a whole platoon of soldiers after Wonder Woman, and her piecing them up quite easily in this issue during some flashbacks that are very cleverly interspersed with what's going on with Wonder Woman and these soldiers. We discover that the character we were recently introduced to, Emily, someone who I think a lot of people were skeptical as to whether she really was or was not an Amazon, or what was her place in all this. And while she only shows up at the very beginning of Wonder Woman #1, where she kills the, I think it's 18 or 19 some odd men in a pool hall that, you know, incites this whole anti-Amazon rhetoric in the United States, we technically see her throughout this second issue, though we don't know it's her until the very end, where we get a throwback to Diana's fight in the Tournament of Grace and Wonder. Now, this is a moment that has actually been retconned on more than one or two different occasions. In this particular case, while I feel like we have largely known who the Warriors were, or at least in some way vaguely aware of who the Warriors were that she went up against in that tournament, in this case, the one she is going up against is Emily. Emily is one of those types of characters where, because of everything else that is going on in the story, the introduction of a second Lasso of Fate being the Lasso of Lies, which is in the possession of the new villain Sovereign, a weapon very similar to the Lasso of Truth, but where the Lasso of Truth that Wonder Woman employs compels a person to tell the truth, the Lasso of Lies does something incredibly different. The Lasso of Lies forces those who fall victim to it to believe whatever the person wielding it says. So taking all that into consideration, you could probably see why there are people who are skeptical about Emily's story. And honestly, while I do believe that Emily is an actual Amazon, I do wonder about the nature of her attack in the pool hall, as well as all the other stuff going on here. Are these fabrications due to the Sovereign's Lasso of Lies, or are these things actually happening? And because of the nature of the Lasso of Lies, once again, it makes sense as to why there are aspects of Wonder Woman's backstory and origin that are being reshaped and retconned in, you know, little and even in some big ways, one might imagine. But all of that aside, the real issue here is not even just the introduction of the Lasso of Lies. There's also the introduction of a new lasso. Now, while this doesn't take place in this issue, there was another issue that came out before this. This was Wonder Woman #800, which came out a few months before Wonder Woman #1. And in that issue, we were introduced to a character that we saw in solicits that a lot of people were curious about. And this was supposed to be the daughter of Wonder Woman and an as yet unnamed father, a character by the name of Elizabeth Marston Prince, aka Trinity. There is a lot that you can learn from that issue, and it sets up a great deal of things. First and foremost of which is that the three Lassos of Fate, the Lasso of Truth, the Lasso of Lies, and an as yet unnamed one, a lasso that I'm gonna just refer to as the Lasso of Secrets. And it's largely because that lasso, while it's never mentioned by name, there is a particular section of this comic where Trinity makes a comment when speaking with the Sovereign. She says that she tires of secrets and she is bored of lies. And when she says this, she holds up the Lasso of Truth. Now, once again, we know that the Sovereign's lasso, who we initially saw in Wonder Woman #1, that Trinity now is in possession of, we know that that's the Lasso of Lies. And the other one, the Silver Lasso, we don't know the name of it, but The fact that she makes this statement and then holds up the lasso of truth leads me to believe this must be the lasso of secrets. None of this is confirmed, so this is just me speculating at this point, but the thing that I find of interest here is that, for one, we're in the future in Wonder Woman 800, and the Sovereign has already been defeated. Wonder Woman has clearly had a daughter by this point, who is a full-grown adult. Jonathan Kent is squarely the one true Superman, and Damian Wayne is the one true Batman. And it's very heavily implied that while we never get an idea of who her father is, we do see mentions here and there that Batman had tasked both Damian and Jonathan to look after her. They even use the words babysit in very certain situations. And while it's never specifically stated if her father may be Superman or Batman, which honestly I think would be a little too on the nose, if that were the case, she does refer to both Jonathan and Damian as her brothers. Now, that could also just be because the nature of how close the ties between Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are, that is very much why they see each other that way. But all of that said, Trinity is the wielder of all three lassos of fate by the time we get to the future, and what we know is that everything about her past has been obscured from her, very similar to how Wonder Woman Diana Prince's past was obscured from her. And we've gone through a couple of different retcons of, you know, her history and how she came to be. There was the whole, oh, well, she's the daughter of Zeus, or she was actually made of clay, and then they've come up with all kind of weird things in between, and sometimes those things are recognized and sometimes those things aren't. It just kind of depends on who's writing at the time. But what you truly need to know here is that, well, for one, the Sovereign is ultimately defeated, and he is imprisoned seemingly by Diana for a very long time and locked away behind trials that honestly only people like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman would be able to defeat. And with her having a name like Trinity, a name that invokes a lot of things for DC Comics readers, namely things like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman all together, all are often referred to as the Trinity of DC Comics. So it does actually make me wonder if maybe this Trinity character is someone who was born in some very strange way, similar to how Diana was born in the past. While we know she is the daughter of Wonder Woman, maybe there was some kind of, I'll just say, interesting process by which both Batman and Superman could be her father. Or it could just be as simple as her father was Steve Trevor and no one talked about him. And I think this even more now than ever, just based on the fact that one of the panels I showed earlier was the Sovereign referring to the Trinity having been forged. Now, one could easily make the case that he's referring more to the three lassos of fate, but bear in mind, he also mentions that she walks among us. And while in the past we have seen that Wonder Woman has referred to the lasso of truth in the feminine, that is actually not what he's talking about. He is referring to the daughter, but that's not to say that both things couldn't be true at the same time. But I'm leaning towards the idea that maybe she was not born in the way that Diana was actually born, but maybe she was closer to being created in the way that Diana was originally believed to have been created. Not necessarily saying she was born from clay, but that she was more created rather than birthed. But I feel like just based on her name, it does invoke a lot of things, and people will probably be speculating about this well until her origin is ultimately and finally revealed. I feel like with the introduction of these new lassos, once again, the lasso of lies and what we're going to refer to as the lasso of secrets, these are very powerful artifacts. Most likely, we know the lasso of truth is, we know the lasso of lies has the potential to be, and whatever this third one is, while we don't, once again, we don't know what it does, and we don't even really know what it's called, I think it's safe to say that this lasso very likely compels people to keep secrets, or if there's anything that they do know, maybe it makes them forget it. That's kind of what I'm thinking is going on here, because it's one of those deals where Trinity just doesn't really know anything about herself outside of being Wonder Woman, being the leader of the Justice League, and how she likes to give her brothers Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent a very difficult time when they have to work together. There are some moments where I kind of feel like she was a little bit, too extra, but being a person who never really grew up having, brothers and sisters living in the same house with me, but also growing up being friends with people who did, I can kind of see where this energy comes from. Like, this does very much smack of brother-sister rivalry, especially when the brothers outnumber the sisters in this particular instance. So yeah, that's one of those deals. I'm pretty cool with that. I don't really have any beef there, but I definitely am curious to know when this Lasso of Secrets is going to come into play, where I'm also wondering if that's also why she is called Trinity, because she is carrying 3 different lassos, and it does make one wonder where this third lasso has come from in the first place. If the Lasso of Secrets is what I believe it to be, part of me wonders if maybe it was something that was created by Wonder Woman, and maybe that's something that's a great shame of hers, because that's kind of one of Wonder Woman's big deals. She hates lies, she loves the truth, and she's not particularly fond of secrets. So the fact that Trinity has all 3 of these things, it says a lot, and that these things exist. Like, we don't really know the origin of the Lasso of Lies. We know that Diana didn't create that, or it wasn't something that she ever used before. But part of me wonders if sometime in the future, like as all of this stuff passes with the Sovereign, if maybe at some point she is put in a position where she has to use it. Because as it stands right now, the United States government is not fond of Amazons. And if you go over to the Amazon Attack series that just started, that kind of runs in tandem with this, there are a lot of people who are not terribly crazy about Amazons right now. And while there are Americans who are standing up for the Amazons, there are also lots of Americans who don't want the Amazons there. And yeah, you can make a case for why maybe, possibly, this would be the case. We've had story arcs in the past where Amazons were treated as threats to the United States and the world at large. There was a previous Amazons Attack story arc back in like 2007, but that was an entirely different scenario. That wasn't one of those situations where I think some people kind of look at it as the Amazons just attacked from out of nowhere, but there was a lot of mitigating factors that actually led into why the Amazons were going to war with the Department of Metahuman Affairs, because they were holding Wonder Woman hostage. Now, granted, as a result of this, and also because of some mitigating factors with the Wonder Woman villain Cersei getting involved, this is ultimately what actually led to that whole entire debacle of them attacking the White House, and by proxy attempting to unalive the president of the United States. There were mitigating factors in that, and honestly, that is just one of those situations where, while yes, all this stuff is still technically canon, and it would definitely give people pause as far as to how they compartmentalize dealing with Amazons. But at the same time, while I know I've seen a lot of people criticize the story arc for saying that it just seems unrealistic, one Amazon murdering a bunch of people is what's going to lead to all this crazy anti-Amazon sentiment. But I mean, I'm going to be real with you and not really trying to drag IRL and fucking current days. The truth of the matter is that we have had situations in the United States where we have put travel bans and immigration bans and even trying to deport people for doing far less. So yeah, all that aside, I do rather enjoy what Tom King is doing here. The idea of Trinity and how she factors in, where she's going to the Sovereign and trying to learn more about her history from him, because right now he's the only person who can really tell her, or at least the only person she believes will tell her. It is heavily implied that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are not around anymore to share in any of these stories. So yeah, right now the only person who Trinity can learn the truth from is a villain. And a villain who has a propensity to lie, though it seems like this guy is actually going to be trying to tell the truth. And considering that over these past couple of issues, you may or may not have noticed that the person narrating the comic is not Wonder Woman, it's not Diana Prince who is telling you the story. It's very obviously the Sovereign. He is the one who's telling you everything, hence why he has such a dismissive tone about a lot of the things going on in the book. Why he is always so dismissive about Wonder Woman, all of that is why that's the case. But anyway, that's really everything I wanted to talk about with Wonder Woman #2. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, make sure you click that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on anything. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Wonder Woman #2. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.